Sorry.
Oh, good. Right. Okay, so what we need
Just to let
do
everybody
is
know,
there
this
will
is
be-
the room where we normally have the tabulators. We have the two tabulators here that. Could I have everybody's attention? Well, I just wanted to explain what we're going to be doing here. We've asked the auditor's office to run some test procedures to show how the machines are actually set up. And Darlene and Heather will be doing that for us. And then we're going to also be looking at some of the ballots that had issues, so we can see how the machine actually spit those out and what the resolution boards did in this process, so that everybody gets a general idea of how things are operated.
Well, we'll just go ahead and clear all the results out that were on the machine, so everything's a zero, which is what we normally do on election night before we start doing test decks or counting, so.
I have to add, test decks always run through perfectly. Because there's no coffee spills, there's no snot, there's no highlighters, we had blood. There's no, love notes. Anyway. Yes, love notes, that's what we call them.
Yeah.
If the candidates could only see them.
And then we always run a zero report. And I don't know if we want to do this preview. And then you can make sure everything's a zero, everything's zeroed out the way it was supposed to. It is 45 pages long, so, but you'll see here that nothing was processed, everything is zeros. So we make sure of that. And then we go to scan. And the first thing we do is we select a precinct. Yeah, we're District 9, so 0309. The precinct is already here, so you don't have to change it. It tells what precinct is that we're going to be counting. So we're ready. The sorts are on, and hopefully it won't keep getting out. Better not.
What sorts are on? How do you have it set right now?
We can probably show them when they're done. Yeah, we'll show you.
If you'll notice, there's 3 bins, and each bin is set up for something specific. There's counted. There is a bin, is the middle one for
Write-ins.
Which we don't have. And then anything that the scanner can't read or doesn't, feels
Right there.
anything's inappropriate with it. I don't know how many ballot security things it goes through, and they will go in the top. But what's nice about the 850s is that they don't stop scanning. So with the 650s, the whole process stopped, which is what slows down your counting process. So they'll all go in the top bin. Now, when we had our jam that I was talking about, it's these that were set in the wrong spot. So I've got a very beautiful picture of it, and they're all just jammed up.
We had a couple of issues with that too, where it would jam
But once
them
you get them set, which can happen on any scanner.
Right. Okay, what we have set for, we have overvotes that go in here, blank ballots, unclear marks, invalid ID, and unreadable, all get sorted into the top bin.
Is it supposed to be sorting for overvotes?
No, you can, but state law does not require you to sort for an overvote.
Well, I think our election rules are even more specific. They don't allow it, do they?
Really?
You shouldn't be sorting for overvotes.
You can, and we
In our
noticed when we
Administrative
first
rules?
when we first started scanning, we were kicking out hesitation marks, which according to the scanner makes a big difference. It considers that a suspect mark, and you want to look at it for possibility of an overvote. And an overvote is you voted for more candidates or choices than are allowed. Well, once I figured that out, we went back, there's a screen in here that you have to take overvotes off. We have to sort out an undervote because the biggest reason is to make sure that you don't get a ballot voted in an inappropriate marker.
Undervotes or blank ballots?
They're the same, I believe, on these. Or is
Nope,
it-
they're separate. So
Different
you can,
blank
You
ballots.
just want to sort for
Excuse me.
blanks,
Just
according
for
to
blanks, that's what
administrative
the state
rules.
law
You
says.
So
shouldn't-
overvotes, we should not.
You should not sort for over or
Overvotes or
undervotes,
undervotes, excuse
just
me.
blanks.
So
Just
you're-
blanks,
so
and
so
that's-
state law prohibits you from searching for
Administrative
overvotes, or
rule.
it just doesn't allow you?
Administrative rule.
And it's a prohibition, or it's just
You have those
not- or
upstairs.
it's
Yeah, I
silent
have it
on
upstairs.
We,
Okay.
yeah.
The reason for that is you're always gonna have overvotes and you're always gonna have undervotes. Specifically undervotes, because the longer your ballot is, the more drop-off you have. And there was a decision when this was discussed, when we went to automatic scanners, of how slow do you want the counting process? And most of the undervotes and overvotes are true. It'll kick out an undervote or an overvote, and it's a true undervote, and it's a true overvote. But what that's done, completely stopped your process, has to go to a manual resolution board, they have to make the determination, and a lot of times they'll try and recreate a ballot because you don't know if it's a channel marking or it's a true undervote. So that's why we're kicking out only blank, and that is the protection only if you voted in the wrong colored ink, which these suckers pick up about anything anymore. They'll pick up a turquoise highlighter. Yeah, ours picked up a turquoise highlighter as a count. So a true blank ballot you hardly ever get. It tracks the undervotes and the overvotes on a long report, but it doesn't kick them out. And anything extra you kick out slows the process down, and because they're so sensitive, does not change the way they vote. It counts the rest of the ballot, but it doesn't count those specific races. But it does track them on a report.
How do you filter for overvotes then?
You can, there's a part on a screen that tells it if there's an overvote anywhere on the ballot, we want you to kick that ballot out.
So technologically you can, but in terms of the regulation, you can't.
No, because when we were going through this and discussing what are we gonna take as a true mark, what are we gonna kick out to count, they were true overvotes. If you vote for 2 and you voted for 3, it's a true overvote. There is no lack of intent on the voter. You can't make the determination for them. So a lot of that discussion was had by the State Board of Elections. And because of the ones we were looking at off of an actual election did not vet out any additional votes, that was the basic determination. And at that time, when we said all blank ballots should be kicked out, the different marking device made a big difference. It simply doesn't on an 850. But not everybody has 850s, so you have to leave that in there. And you just look at it and you say, can't count it, you recreate it.
So, just to clarify, because I was part of a resolution board, so a few different times, and what we've noticed on these machines was when it looked like it was an overvote, it was just somebody with a hesitation, they set the pen down in a spot, and they ended up marking definitely, 2 spots out of 3. Well, in that situation, will that be considered an overvote if they had a hesitation mark on it?
We have rerun those ballots. We were running into that. And on the ballots we reran, it did not consider that an overvote for a hesitation mark. There has to be more substantial marking in that oval, and I don't know what the limit is, but the limit is set so that I don't know if you, as a person, not the voter, could intend the difference.
We're gonna try and run a few of the ballots that got kicked out, just to show how the machine kicks out some ballots for these different issues. And where do you want to go from here,
Okay, well,
Darlene, with your demonstration?
we run our test ballots through, we save them. We have a manual count, and we double check to make sure that everything matches, and I don't know if we want to go there at this point. It's just a matter of checking things off. But those are We test them before we start using the machines that night. They're tested by the people that are running the machines. I usually set up the test decks, so I'm not down here running the machines. The people that run the machines run test decks through and double check and make sure everything it's counting it correctly. Then it's zeroed out before we start.
Yep.
So,
Under the test deck rules, I don't know if it's a rule or a law.
Rule.
Sue can tell you.
I'm sure it's administrative rule.
Yeah. It tells you how many ballots you have to mark for each race, if you have to have overvotes, blanks, that type of thing, folded,
Yeah.
that type of thing. We have a service due. The people that print our ballots have a service that pre-marks test ballots, and I think Minnehaha may be the only county that does it. Our test deck, because we have so many more splits, is over 2,000 ballots. And how many times you run that through, there's a public test, sometime the week before that you have to run in front of a Republican and a Democrat. So you already know what your end result is going to be. And also on your scanners, these probably have more security checks than the 650s, but it also checks all these lines that they're in the right spots. I don't know what you guys call this.
Like our code channel registration.
Yeah, I call these channel codes. If those aren't in the right spot, it doesn't like it. If it's not the right weight of paper, it doesn't like it. These scanners can read in any orientation, but anything that's wrong with that, it kicks it out. This is where we were having an issue with ballot stamp. Brookings County had the issue. We thought it was bleed through. We had the issue. Minnehaha had the issue.
I don't think you did.
we did on a few.
Not many.
No.
Not nearly as many as you did.
Yeah, we didn't have
We
much
had
any.
almost as many reconstructs as we did missing absentee ballots. But we told our poll workers, do not violate any of these lines. And we also thought, and the reason we know these things are more sensitive, you could mark anything in red with a 650 or an M100 and it wouldn't count it. So our ballot stamps, or excuse me, our precinct stamps are in red ink. Well, the way we designed our ballot, we wanted the backs all the same, so we had a very full front. Well, that meant that they thought they could put their ballot stamp right down here. It did not like that. And we're talking two of our largest precincts that we counted at last. So that was a lot, and the point at that point in time, the only thing you can do is recreate, which is very time consuming. You have to have a Republican and a Democrat, you have to have a new ballot. This person reads to this person, and marking 244 ovals takes some time. And I think you had 400 and some?
600.
600 and some?
All recreated, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what I did when we realized it was ballot stamps creating the problem, I called in extra people. And I don't know that Bob did. I think we had
Ours
10
wasn't-
recreating teams.
Ours wasn't the stamp that we were recreating on because we really
But
didn't
still,
have
when
any.
we knew we
But
were
right,
gonna have to
right.
recreate that many, and we were already running late, we called in more absentee teams, Republicans and Democrats.
I was on the resolution board that Bob put together at around midnight.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You just
there were
start
two more
calling in
res-
people and different people to start recreating, because we thought we were gonna have to do these huge precincts that have over 1,000 ballots.
Just
But
a little
that's
word of explanation. On the earlier generation, this is a direct descendant of our first central scanner.
Would you identify yourself?
Sure, Mike Hoverston from Election System and Software, and I'm the regional sales manager for the area.
Thank
The earlier systems had what we call infrared read heads. So they were designed to read like a carbon pencil mark, if you will, or a special marker with carbon in it. And the good thing, it was very sensitive, it would pick a mark, but if a person used their own pen, for example, an absentee grabbed their own pen, or when they went to the polls, they grabbed their own pen, those read heads wouldn't necessarily pick that mark up. we switched to what we call a visible light read head. And there it takes and reads anything from the visible light spectrum, so anything other than green, it will pick up. So if someone marks a pen, a black pen, ballpoint, a black marker, a blue pen, a blue marker, it's able to pick up more marks than the older read heads. So for absentees, it's been a huge boom where you can't control the writing device that they use. So as a result, if you do put marks on the ballot and you don't want the system read, they need to be in green rather than the red because of the visible light read heads.
Well, that was on the optical scan technology. On the DSA 50, we've moved to digital scan technology. Now we're looking at pixel recognition. So it even becomes less of a concern of what color of, writing device that you're using. Now we just recommend obviously blue or black ink. So.
And one of the things, Alexa, Scott Morris and I with the SNS as well, one of the things we've talked about in South Dakota, because the ballot stamps are part of state law, is on the ballots. I know that Julie and Bob and Darlene and Heather all talk to their poll workers about where they're supposed to stamp their ballots.
They don't listen.
So what we've talked about is possibly moving towards designing a specific place that'll have like a little watermark that says "Place stamp here."
They still won't listen.
That's so that's something that
So you give them a
that might be
designated
an
spot
option.
for that.
Now the hard part about that is if you have a full front and back ballot and you're taking out real estate in order to say "Place stamp here." You may be moving to a longer ballot or 2 pages, and those are all conversations that the county auditors and decisions that
But
they
you're
have
gonna
to
have to
make.
do that anyway. If you've got a full front and back, you still have to have some place for them to stamp. And so whether you have the box, what we've decided when we plan our ballot, we're gonna have, if they're gonna stamp the front, we're gonna have a big enough spot here. On the ballots we had problems with, they did have room if they'd have squeezed it in, but we're gonna give them a bigger spot. And if we have to go to a longer ballot, that's what we're gonna do if your ballot's full, whether they put a watermark or not. And we ordered new ballot stamps, and had we known green was the color, we'd have ordered them in green, but no, they're red. You can almost read them. But they're smaller, so we don't need as much space also.
Ours are red.
And that's the other thing that we saw. We saw this in Davidson County in June, and they were going to have to order new stampers because they had kind of a hodgepodge of sizes and shapes. So if you're going to create a spot on the ballot, you're going to have some continuity as to what size those stampers are, and not replacing them as one breaks or a
And
poll
they
worker
can't-
sticks it in their pocket.
And if a marking device bleeds through, that was what we heard was part of the problem in Davison County, is that their stamp was wet, and so it bled through, and so since it reads both sides, it didn't know what to do with that, whether there was anything. So I even went to the instructions, make sure, staff, that is a dry stamp. You can almost read it. And I told my precinct workers, don't hesitate, just do a quick little stamp, I don't want any bleeding through. And some of your felt pens will bleed through, that's not the scanner's problem, we want it to kick it out for that. But that was part of our issue, when if you take all the blood and the snot and the coffee and everything else out. If it violates any of those lines, those channel markers, it's kicking it out, because it has there's a code, and it tells you if it has a suspect mark in what race it's in, if it can tell you that that's what the problem is.
Now, I've heard about the stamps, and bleed through, because I had one poll worker who thought she was trying to drive it to China. Same poll worker was taking the felt pens off of the voting booths, replacing them with pencils, because that's how they did it in the old days, when I told her 4 times. Then I, because they were running out, they were disappearing. I had to call Bob and have somebody deliver some pens. They were in her pocket.
Oh, jeez.
We provide,
Once
it's
we-
the cheapest Bic pen blue that you can buy. And we provide dozens at the precincts, and I'm sure most people do. And we tell our precinct workers, whether they remember is the thing,
Well, and I ended up with
don't
my felt
use
test the other
anything
night,
but our little pen.
But another thing she was doing too was, you know, I'd stamp a bunch of ballots, because I was a superintendent, and hand them out, and then when she would start stamping in the next batch of, 100, she'd flip them over and then stamp them. So I have stamps on the right side and the back side. And I didn't know if that made any difference or not. And finally just-
It's those damn lines.
And
that's
and
not,
they're-
that's the nicest thing I call them.
The system also has some new technology. Usually the problem is not being able to pick up certain marks that a voter will make. They won't completely fill in the oval. So we've developed patented technology, we call it intelligent mark recognition. So that there's certain algorithms built in the system, so if it sees a check mark or an X in the oval, it can also pick up that. But there are certain boundaries that you have to respect when marking these ballots. The code channel, or the registration channel, I like to refer to as, it's the series of black boxes right here. It helps to make sure that the ballot is going true, that there isn't skew to the ballot. So these boxes also correspond with the voting oval positions on the ballot as well. Then there are marks that basically turn on the read heads, and when they get to the bottom, it shuts off so it knows when it's done scanning that ballot. So all these areas are critical. When the machine looks at this ballot, it's really not looking at the center, it's looking at either the code channel, the sequence channel, or the voting positions. So, as Julie said, it's very important that you don't get extra marks in those critical read areas, because anytime it sees something that it's not supposed to see, it just outstacks that ballot.
I gotta, as far as these go compared to, I'm kinda gonna compare it to the barcode reader that scans railroad cars as they go by. And they get a lot of junk on them, and I think they're still reading pretty accurately. Now, are these, can they be toned down? Or they eliminate some of your little specks or
I would not.
dots?
No, we don't want that.
Okay.
No, as soon as you start messing with the specs and tolerances, then you have no standard of where you're reading from. And so when you get rid of the standard, then you can get yourself
And you
into
said
even
you
more
were
trouble.
talking about pixel readers now.
Yeah.
Is laser involved in this at all? Laser scanners?
No.
They work good on Apache. Used to be the helicopter pilots.
Okay. All right, Darlene. What do you guys?
We're gonna put some of the ballots that were kicked out.
Okay.
And put them in with some of the test data.
Ah.
See if it'll,
See what it does.
Oh, you're fine.
That should be funny.
That should be. Oh, I thought she said that should be funny.
No,
Not that should be
no,
funny.
I've heard funny too.
So are they putting them in all the same way, or are they putting them in like
Oh, you
backwards,
can,
upside down?
you can do either. When we test, we do them upside down, backwards, yeah.
Well, I
And we can
saw what
certainly,
that room looked like when they were opening the boxes election night.
yeah, we can,
Makes you wonder.
you can do.
In the older systems, we would corner cut the ballot because they all had to go in one direction. With the new systems now,
Although a lot of habits, I mean, you get in that habit of having them all kind of going the
Why I
same
wonder
way,
if we
so.
should try and get that habit of trying to use getting as much uniform as possible.
It,
In your boxes is hard.
Yeah. Well,
in the
and
poll
also-
boxes, and it doesn't make any difference because they're not full. But
Yes, ma'am. Oh.
Are you talking about the folds? The folds matter, make sure they're nested correctly. To make sure it's balanced and nested correctly.
oh yeah, we wind ours down. We're going to less folds and we're cutting the corners off, or else we're gonna have the absentee paperwork from all of the same orientation. So that
Laura.
the weights and back end them so that the weights that.
Froze up on us.
Did it? Oh, do a hard check.
to every computer, right?
Turn them on and off.
That's my solution. Work, turn it off. Turn it back on.
That's my solution.
Did you try removing it? Yes, ID
I
department.
did that.
Yes. Thanks.
I'm
Thanks
gonna
for the
Google
help.
it.
Yeah.
This is why we have ES and S here.
Flip the switch.
So I could just say,
While we're going through this, there was a problem on election night with 45 minutes where I believe it was that machine over there in the backside had gone down.
What do you mean had gone down? Like
shut off.
It shut off.
In the middle of doing, it shut off and then they couldn't get it back on.
What was it? I would probably look on if it was correctly hooked up to the UPS.
it was, yeah.
Mary Kay,
Mary Kay was here, yeah.
I would have to have it. I would probably have the technician look at it then, and then.
Yeah.
She did all of it. Mary Kay, we had her on it. as
No,
well.
I mean, like, I would have like a technician come
Yeah.
in and do a PM on it.
Yeah. Well, has he came in since then?
I don't think anyone's been up since the election, have they? Ty was up before.
Well, did Ty come before we had the recount, didn't he?
Yes, Ty did come.
Oh, did he look at that one? Okay, I'll follow up. I'll follow up on that one.
Yeah.
Why did it just spit out paper? Just
Oh,
This is an audit log, and basically every time you do something on the machine, it writes to it and tells you
Okay.
what you did. So
All right.
it's just told us, hey, you restarted your scanner.
But does it give any idea of why the machine quit? It doesn't have
It
an error
doesn't.
log that it prints out that say?
Internally, if we needed to download the internal logs, we could.
you can, but it's still freezing. It's still freezing.
It doesn't clear any of the tallies that are
If
in
you
the
have,
machine?
whatever you have saved on your hard drive, it will maintain.
Okay,
So if you have scanned 1,000 ballots and they've been saved to the hard drive of the unit, that is all going to be still there.
is it
and
saved
signed
as
and
a text
preserved.
file or some kind of standard file?
I
It's an
can, you know,
encrypted file.
Yeah,
So,
I couldn't tell
like,
you what
couldn't.
type of
We
file.
couldn't just pull it off and open my laptop.
No,
open.
no,
right.
and you even have to have a special kind of USB stick that
It's
we
plugged in.
we have.
Yeah.
Sure it is.
But if you have one that's saved on, I usually call it short-term memory that you haven't saved to the hard drive.
The
Those,
RAM.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could fire up the other one.
Does not like this. No, I would probably just.
We can call Ty and have him come visit again.
Yeah. Try to get here now. 2.5 hours. Yeah.
Well, it's time today, right?
Yeah, sure. I've made him drive farther.
Boot up the other one, maybe.
Because I went to save the ballots that I recorded, and it wouldn't save, it would just lock it up when I press save. And so they shut it down, restarted the machine, clicked on log in,
Yeah.
and they wrote
Have you ever had a problem with these units? And I don't know if it's connected, but that's the only that I've experienced it.
Now, is this consistent with what was going on?
Well, we did have some issues with that a couple of times, but not, I don't know that they had that issue on election night, I don't believe so. But again, I wasn't down here, so.
It's freezing up. Wouldn't save what's already been done.
I mean, we could start with the machine.
It's only your current election you've loaded. You can't load multiple elections.
Is it plugged in? I just plugged it in. Turn it up, one on the first or turn UPS on first, middle? Yeah. And then the.
It would if you went through the internal audit log.
Is that something the auditors can do?
Are we gonna move everything to the other machine?
I think Heather was going to boot that one up. We'll see if this one.
You can go through either the paper audit trail or you can
Just wanted everybody to know that
the internal electronic audit trail. Yeah, that's all your information.
Save them for how long?
Mike,
Well, you can download.
while we're here
Until you
and
clear
going
the
through this
machine.
process, could you
So,
explain the
like,
differences between the 650 and the 850.
Oh, I'd be glad to.
And one of the other sides to this was in the discussion on election night at about midnight, 1 o'clock, we had a visitor come to here and stood by my resolution table and asked why we don't just pull in the 650s and just crank them up and start counting ballots and add to the total. Can you explain why that wasn't possible?
Well, first of all, the 650 uses different media. We use zip drives with the 650. This now uses USB drives. So,
Explain to everybody.
so it's a different media.
So it's a totally different technology.
Right, and the 650s are set up different, so whenever a 650 comes to a defective or misread ballot, it stops the machine right there. It doesn't have the outstack bits. This also has rollers through the entire read path, so if you're feeding absentee ballots that have been folded, it's guided with this true grip technology. So the 650, if we had a folded ballot through, it's very time consuming. It doesn't like folded ballot. The read has, like I mentioned before, this has visible light, the 650 and the predecessors.
Yeah, it was this machine, yeah.
This you can put ballots in any direction. 650, you have to put them all in the same
We had a
orientation.
couple times
We
when
can
we
have
jammed
variable
up.
ballot length with this, with our first generation. You had 14 inches and only 14
Yep.
inches.
I think, are we moving over to the other machine?
Yes.
All right. Okay, this part of the process is going to be showing us how they spit out bad ballots, or ballots that have problems. We've taken some ballots that are from the previous general election. And would you tell us what you're doing now as you're going through
The
this?
top bin that it put on the top, anything that it said that had a problem. And there is a report that you can print that'll tell you what was wrong and everything like that. That way you can go through and see exactly what it stopped it for.
So I don't know if you guys were using those reports on your resolution table because when it picks out a hesitation mark, it usually doesn't call it an overvote, it usually calls it unclear. So to a normal person would think it was an overvote, but
When they would have a ballot that had a problem, they would examine it, they would try running them again, and then they would then bring it to us with they would tell us what some tables started out with the reports, but they were able to explain to us in each one, and then we would examine the ballot.
okay, because I think the reports are always nice to have.
Yeah, and I think we were printing those.
Yeah.
Because I told staff to go ahead and print those. Now, the very first one it shows is overvote, and it's the very first one that came out for the Attorney General. And if you can see, there was a mark in the second person's name in that oval. And then that was taken to the resolution board, and then they determined what it should be, and they set up a new ballot.
Thank you.
So what you're calling hesitation mark?
Yeah, and this,
Right.
Yep, they would have that, and then there would be,
let's go, let's see, the second one is an overvote in the Senate race.
they would
There's a mark.
they would sometimes, the
Right
pens
here.
were so wet, they would take and sometimes it was this large, and many times it was even smaller.
Do your third one. That one had an unclear mark in the county auditor. See what that one was.
So that was the second one. Thank you. Okay. And now this one is even a smaller mark.
That's the perfect example right there of what kicked this ballot out.
Yeah, it says unclear marks.
Unclear mark.
And so, and when we're on the resolution board, we look at this and we recreate this ballot, and this is our markings that are on the top to say what the resolutions board did and why.
So I mean, yeah, that's a perfect example, certainly.
We did a lot of those.
Your next one's unclear mark, circuit court, position E.
Another one,
Okay, yes, another
Position.
right here, where it's just a dot.
and when we're on the resolution board, we actually can see that they stopped just to decide which one they were gonna mark and move on. There was no question on these, but we had to do over 600 of these.
Your next three are overvotes, and your last one is an unclear mark on initial measure 18.
Oh. So 17, there were 2 marks. One.
Yep.
And so in that situation on the resolution board, we've decided that what they were trying to do is tell us they didn't want to vote yes on this issue, they wanted to vote no, and they made it very clear they were changing their mind.
Little spider. What does look like a spider, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What would that be called?
That's an
It's an
overvote.
Overvote, okay.
And the,
Because
each
both
board,
ovals,
Ovals are-
because the machine is programmed to look where these ovals are to see what is in each of the ovals.
and between the board, it's a Democrat and Republican.
Yeah,
Then
I was there,
They
so I know
together,
that
then
part.
they talk about it, do they count it, do
Yeah,
they not?
and
It's
they
up
get-
to that board of
Sure.
what they're gonna do.
Sure.
I think you got a question behind
Well,
that.
yeah, this is,
That would be an interesting
because
one.
this is an overvote also.
Question, Bruce.
Oh, so-
Deborah had-
It's marked out both
Wants to
and
see
then
it.
put their own oval in
Oh my god.
for a yes. So, yeah, that's a very different one.
Lovely.
It's probably shaking here.
We see all kinds of things, and on a situation like that, we would say, yes, they wanted to make sure that it was a yes.
Overvote on Secretary of State.
Oh, and this one, Secretary of State overvote, and then they scribbled one out.
There were just 600 ballots like this?
Is that what the number
600
was?
is
A little over
Resolution board.
600, yeah.
And the
The last one is an unclear mark on initial measure 18.
Okay, again, this is a very small dot.
Wow.
So we wanted to make sure everybody's vote counted, and it was very important that we get this process correct. So,
See the rest of it?
if anybody has any more questions, I think we can address the questions upstairs. But thank you very much for the demonstration.